Good morning, afternoon, and evening to everyone who is joining us today for our Power Sector Learning Series webinar. We're going to go ahead and get started today. So this webinar is on updating the ASEAN power grid for increased renewables. My name is Megan Mercer. I'm the program coordinator for the Southeast Asia EDGE Hub. And today we're joined by experts across several organizations to present the results of the ASEAN Interconnection Masterplan Study, or AIMS 3, to talk about lessons learned and challenges. Now, this webinar is part of the USAID's Asia EDGE Power Sector Learning Series. If you'd like to learn more information about the series of what programming and projects Asia EDGE is involved with, you can feel free to explore these links on this slide for more information. Now I want to cover a couple housekeeping issues with everybody before we get too far into it. You'll notice that we have a chat box and a Q&A box in this application. So feel free to use this throughout to interact with us. And then we ask that if you do have any questions that you would like to submit, please use the Q&A function, and we will go ahead and gather those as we go to use for our panel discussion, which will take place in the end of the first half of this webinar. We'll also be utilizing polling during this webinar, so check the chat box for a link to participate when the time comes, and we will let you know when that time is. And also, all of the presentations, as well as a recording of the presentations and of this webinar, will be available to everybody at the end, so look out for that. So I'm now going to pass everything off to our moderator today, Jen Weidman, who is the CEO of Space Bangkok. Jen, over to you. Jen, you're muted if you can hear me.
Megan, since Jen is seems to be muted, I could just introduce the first speaker, or
I'll go ahead and do it. So So to start today, we're going to have some opening remarks from a few experts in the fields, and I'll go ahead and pass off the mic to Dr. Nuki Agautama, if you would like to go ahead and present opening remarks.
Yes, thank you very much, Megan. Pleasant good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Your Excellency Hotmatua Bakara, the Papua Secretary in Charge, Your Excellency Amanda Van Den Du, Energy and Infrastructure Team Lead, USAID Regional Development Mission for Asia, and also my colleague Dana Kenny, Chief of Party for USAID Clean Power Asia. All distinguished Papua working groups, representatives and utilities experts from all ASEAN member states. I would like also to convey the greetings to honorable members of Apgcc, member of Technical Working Group, the Hawaii National Energy Institute, the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, also the International Energy Agency, the International Renewable Energy Agency, and also colleagues from USAID Clean Power Asia. Good morning again. On behalf of the ASEAN Centre for Energy, I would like to welcome you all to the ASEAN Interconnection Masterplan Study 3, or we call it AIMS 3, Operationalization Webinar. As you may know, ASEAN has set to advancing the multilateral power trade, which will be a key focus of ASEAN Power Grid, or APG, to achieve the goal of ASEAN Economic Community, or AEC, in 2025, which is to enhance connectivity, energy security, as well as the sustainability. These efforts include the publication and dissemination of the ASEAN Power Grid Interconnection conducted under AIMS 3 study, and it is hoped to provide the new and updated plan of the APG to be used as the main references for the region to pursue the development of a high-level plan for the realization of multilateral power trading, as well as integrate higher share of renewables into the APG. The AIMS 3 Phase 1 report was finalized based on the AMS feedback on the RE resource assessment, capacity expansion planning, production cost simulation, and also socio-economic environmental analysis. The key findings of phase 1 are that it is technically and economically feasible, include it is practical, to achieve the 23% target of ASEAN renewable energy, which is mostly wind and solar, and accounting around 8 to 9% of the generation mix by 2025. And also the higher wind and solar target of 25% at the ASEAN level by 2040, which is possible without creating any significant impacts on the power system reliability and stability. Apart from the latest update on the AIMS 3 studies, we would like to bring your kind attention to the presentation on lessons learned and challenges of implementing Ltms interconnection, or Laos, Thailand, Myanmar, Malaysia, and Singapore interconnection, which later to be presented by our honored AIMS 3 working group's representative from Laos PDR, Honorable Dr. Santisuk Tim Pachan. And during this webinar, we are expecting the outcomes, which is cover required action for finalizing the prioritization of interconnection and affiliated power trade agreements, PRE potential in Southeast Asia, and opportunities for investment associated with the high priority interconnection, opportunities for funding interconnection, especially on the renewable resources such as hydro, geothermal, solar, wind in the region, and also understand the gaps in Southeast Asia nation grid codes required to facilitate power trade using the high priority interconnection and for integrating solar and wind into the system. Last but not least, I do believe we can fulfill our task to strengthen our capacity and cooperation in the development of ASEAN power grid. I thank my team, ACE colleagues, and also ABD Associate and GE for their tremendous collaboration and effort for this work. I wish you all to have fruitful deliberation and successful discussion. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Back to you, Megan.
Thank you, Dr. Nuki. Hi, everyone. I'm Jen. I just had a tech problem right when you needed me. I'm very sorry about that. And I will be helping facilitate for the rest of our webinar today. So thank you very much for that, Dr. Nuki. And I would like to next invite Mr. Hotmartua Bakara, the Secretary in charge of the Papua Secretariat, to give some opening remarks. Please go ahead.
Okay, Honorable ACE Executive Director, Dr. Nuki Agia Utama, and also Regional Energy Advisor, USAID Regional Development Mission for Asia, Mr. Scott C. Bartes, and Chief of Party USAID Clean Power Asia, Dana Kenny, Ms. Dana Kenny, and also ASEAN member state representatives, Papua Working Groups representatives, Apgcc members, colleagues from GE Energy Consulting, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to all of you and warm greetings from Jakarta, Indonesia. First, I would like to express my high appreciation to ACE and also USAID for holding today's webinar. Although we still have to face the COVID-19 pandemic situations, it is a very pleasure that we managed together this morning, meeting you all again virtually to have a discussion regarding the progress. One of the major Asian power grid study, the ASEAN Interconnection Masterplan study, or AIMS 3. My sincere gratitude to USAID as a financial supporter for this AIMS 3 study. I believe the study will make a great contribution to the energy development in ASEAN for enhancing energy connectivity and market integration to achieve energy security, accessibility, affordability, and sustainability for all ASEAN society. I would like also to thank to all parties that have been involved in the development of the AIMS 3 study so far. I am looking forward to continue support and cooperation from all related parties, so we could achieve the target to launch the AIMS 3 result in SOM or AMEM 2021. Ladies and gentlemen, in the 30th AMEM held virtually by Vietnam last year, the ministers officially have endorsed the ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation, or APIC Phase 2, 2021 to 2025, with a sub-theme of accelerating energy transition and strengthening energy resilience through greater innovation and cooperation. The APIC Phase 2 frames the region's energy cooperation agenda in the next 5 years, as well as the longer-term works towards a sustainable ASEAN energy future. In the APIC Phase 2, 2021 to 2025, the objective-based strategy, OBS, of ASEAN Power Grid Program focused on the three main strategies: to accelerate the completion of APG projects from AIMS-2 and initiate the expansions of multilateral electricity trading, working on minimum requirements to advance multilateral electricity trading, including political, technical, and institutional requirements, and explore integrating renewable energy and other digital developments into the ASEAN Power Grid. AIMS-3 results will be significant support for planning the expansions of multilateral trading and integration of renewable energy into ASEAN Power Grid. Ladies and gentlemen, in the 38th AMEM, also the ministers noted that on renewable energy, ASEAN achieved a 30.9% RE share in the total primary energy supply, or TPES, and a 26.8% share in total installed power capacity in 2018. Ministers welcome the robust measures in APIC Phase 2 to accelerate energy transition and committed to achieve the new ASEAN RE target of 35% of total installed power capacity by 2025, which will contribute to achieving the aspirational RE target of 23% share in TPS by 2025. Further, based on the key findings of AIMS-3 study Phase 1 and 2, that is technically and economically feasible to achieve the 23% ASEAN renewable energy target, with VRE contributions accounting for 8 to 9% of the generation mix by 2025, and higher VRE targets of 25% at the ASEAN level by 2040 are possible without creating any significant impacts on power system reliability and stability. The outcomes would be as expected, that AIMS-3 study would optimize the grid to accommodate more penetration of the variable renewable energy to the grid without compensate the grid stability. Hence, it will support to fulfill the objectives in the APIC Phase 2 2021 to have energy transition and strengthening energy resilience in ASEAN grid. I am looking forward to having other findings from Phase 3 of the study that focused on multilateral market analysis. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope by hearing and discussing the progress of AIMS-3 study in this webinar could give the understanding and explanations to all stakeholders of energy in ASEAN on how to take necessary action in implementing and achieving the target that has been stipulated in APIC Phase 2, 2021-2025, especially to increase the renewable energy mix in ASEAN to 23% in 2025. We are all aware that such heavy task to achieve the target. However, I believe all are possible if we can work together hand in hand. Good collaboration, close coordination, and cooperation must be always maintained on progress. I hope that we can still obey the health protocol, and then I hope that pandemic soon be over and we can meet face to face again. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for those introduction remarks. I would like to now invite Amanda Van den Doel, the Energy and Infrastructure Team Lead for USAID Regional Development Mission for Asia. If you would also like to give us some welcome and introductory remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jen. And thank you and welcome everyone to today's webinar. On behalf of the U.S. Agency for International Development, or USAID, the Regional Development Mission for Asia, it's my pleasure to welcome you here today for this plenary session of the webinar, Updating the ASEAN Power Grid for Increased Renewables. A very specific thank you to Dr. Nuki and Mr. Bakara, as well as the entire Clean Power Asia team, and to all of you for joining us today. I'd like to begin by thanking the Papua Secretariat and representatives, as well as ACE, for convening this virtual dialogue. This webinar is a key element of USAID's focus on facilitating power trade in Southeast Asia to promote energy security in the region and level the playing field for private sector investment under the All-of-Government Asia Enhancing Development and Growth Through Energy, or Asia EDGE initiative. The ASEAN Interconnection Masterplan Study 3, or AIMS-3, the third update of a regional plan to support the ASEAN power grid led by Papua, identifies future power plants and infrastructure needed to reach or exceed ASEAN's 23% renewable energy goal by 2025, reduce power system costs for all ASEAN member states, and promote electricity trade among Southeast Asian countries. This webinar includes presentations on AIMS-3 phases 1 and 2 overall results, emphasizing planned power trade and the associated interconnections, renewable energy generation investment, and Papua's development of an implementation plan with support from ACE, including prioritization of interconnections and affiliated power trade agreements. We hope that governments, utility planners, and policymakers come away from this webinar with a basic understanding of the approach and results of the AIMS-3 study and the inspiration to link its findings to your power development plans and policies to achieve or exceed the ASEAN 23% renewable energy goal. USAID also hopes that the private sector and other development partners will have greater insight into the specific potential for renewable power into the region, as well as the infrastructure plan to facilitate power trade and the associated opportunities for investment. I'd like to close by commending all of you, speakers and participants, for taking time to share your views and knowledge, as well as offering your unique insights today. I look forward to participating in this session this morning with you and wish you a fruitful and productive webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amanda. We are very fortunate today to have some very knowledgeable experts who will be talking and presenting and sharing information and answering questions. We will be hearing from Benny Suryadi he is the manager of the Power Fossil Fuel Alternative Energy and Storage for the ASEAN Centre for Energy, or ACE. Also, Dr. Akbar Swandaru, the senior officer for the Fossil Fuel Alternative Energy and Storage Department for ACE as well. We will hear from Dr. Santisuk Pinpachanan, the Deputy Director General for the Department of Energy Policy and Planning for the Laos Ministry of Energy and Mines. And we'll also be hearing from Mr. Pitun Juntip, the Renewable Energy Planning Expert for USAID Clean Power Asia. So we're looking forward to having a lot of exchange as well. As you're listening, as you're taking in the presentations and discussion, if you have questions, please do submit those to the Q&A function because there will be several opportunities throughout this webinar where we will be taking questions, answering questions, and having discussion with all of our panelists and presenters. There will also be a panel discussion later with even more people to come and share their expertise and thoughts. So please do be putting in questions in the Q&A along the way. Don't wait until that moment because we'd love to have your questions coming in as our presenters are talking. That way we know they're there and we can address them as much as possible. So without further ado, I would like to invite Benny Suryadi to talk to us about the overview and progress of AIMS 3.
Thank you very much, Jen. Thank you very much for the introduction. My name is Benny Suryadi. I'm from the ASEAN Centre for Energy, and it's my honor as a project manager of the AIMS 3 to brief to all participants today on the overview and the progress of our AIMS 3 studies. Next slide, please. So as also already here the studies, the ASEAN Interconnection Masterplan is based on the following previous two studies. In 2003, where it was a regional electrical power transmission network on the ASEAN power grid. And then in 2010, we made some updates based on the economic situation, and also energy requirements. And now, as you hear that we are updating the third portion of this activity. These are on the interconnection on the energy sectors in ASEAN, coming from centers to enable expanded power trade, as well as to integrate higher share of renewable energy into the ASEAN power grid. So it's very huge mandate, as Bakara is also mentioned, and for that we are very grateful. This AIMS 3 study is being developed with a strong collaboration between the strong partnership between ACE and Papua, and then we also have support from the global experts coming from the HNEI, NREL, IEA, and IRENA, with our consultant GE, but most important is also with the technical and generous funding support from USAID program. Next slide, please. And as we are updating this AIMS 3 study, on this third version of the regional plan is via because I know, and maybe you are familiar with map of the ASEAN power grid that is being circulated, being presented to the public between the countries in the region on bilateral levels. But then the study is being revised and enhanced based on the change of the economic landscape and also the electricity supply industry. The power sector industry is changing very fast, growing very fast. It's very important for us to reflect this change. And also, this AIMS 3 study responded to the uptake target we already mentioned earlier, to achieving 23% of renewable energy share in energy mix by 2025. And also, the time zone is being expanded until 2040. It's being conducted in 4 scenarios. A best case scenario where we implemented all the commitment from the country under the power development plan. We then did some co-optimization of the interconnection capacity and PRE and conventional generation expansion. We also have a PIE target and look the possibility for having higher PRE for advancing multilateral power trade. Next slide, please. As ASEAN is rich with the renewable energy source, be it geothermal, hydro, biomass, etc. But in this study, we are focusing on 2 VRE, solar and wind. It's being identified a very significant potential that we have for both solar and wind. More detail will be provided, will be presented by my colleague, Dr. Akbar's letters. But this huge resource is a significant element for the ASEAN to achieve its target. Next slide, please. As you can see in this slide, where we are projecting the capacity in ASEAN to fulfill the demand or the hungry of the region on the electricity demand, in various scenarios that we have, be it our best year 2018, and then we look into 2025, our reference year for the uptake, and also look into the longer period until 2040s. You can see that if we only reflecting what the country is currently committed under the Power Development Plan, until 2025, we're only going to have around 19 gigawatts solar and 6.5 gigawatt wind. But the ASEAN is committing to achieve its regional energy target by 2025. Then there is additional capacity expected to be committed by ASEAN at around 83 gigawatt solar, or only around 1% from the potential, and 12.3 gigawatt wind, or only 4% of its potential to achieve it. Then next slide. Having renewable energy is not only for the benefit of the country itself. Yes, of course, it's to increase the renewable energy share in that country. But what is also important and then become the key element of the AIMS-3 study, where we are utilizing renewable energy resource for the interconnection among the countries in the region. As you can see in the map that we identified the interconnection between all of the countries, we modeled a power flow analysis for all of the countries between 2025 until 2040s. But what is important, I would like to share, is all the proposed interconnection are technically viable. So it's providing cross-border interconnection and strengthening of the grid at the national level are implemented. The ASEAN grid will be capable of next slide, please. And of course, as we are aspiring to have more renewable energy into our system, everybody is asking, so how much the cost is needed to that? And it's still a common knowledge that we have having more renewable energy costs more to be injected, and it's a huge money, and who will also cover it, and then how much that will be covered. And I think it's also one important point why we're having webinars today, engaging all the private sector to discussion as well. But what I would like to present to you the finding from our AIMS-3 studies in this various scenario. I mentioned earlier we have 4 scenarios. You can see in the table a different arrangement on the system cost based on the net present value between 2018 until 2040s. There is a variable of the build cost, a variable for interconnection costs, a variable for fuel costs, operational costs. But under the best case, we are aiming a higher interconnectivity required, of course, interconnection for and however, with the cost and the solar investment, the total cost PV for the renewable energy target is renewable. So you see that how the number play that is expensive, but it's longer time during this period. The achieving having higher renewable energy to this connected to the higher cost. Next slide. And about the cost, we also identify from these AIMS-3 studies. It's talking about the jobs creation that we can have from having renewable energy, having more interconnection between the countries. If anyone is asking that, the power jobs in the conventional fuels, I said no, because this AIMS-3 is look into the new possibilities of renewable energy into the system. So it's exactly the creating the new jobs creation for the countries. And it also that not only job, we are also talking about it, how much the avoided fuels that we can have from this interconnection, as the countries in region is become more and more net importers on oil, on natural gas, and soon about the coal. So having more renewable energy penetration through the interconnection will also avoid the needed cost for the region, will also turn into the more energy security for region. And definitely, as we are having more renewable energy, less fossil fuels, it will also provide the opportunity for the avoided emission. Next slide, it will be my last slide about the overviews and the highlights and recommendation about the AIMS-3 studies. So this AIMS we had the AIMS-2 in which the plan of the cross-border interconnection in ASEAN is being re-optimized. So it's being re-evaluated in the instruction with the development of the Rcre to meet the ASEAN renewable energy target. Also look the possibility having higher number than related. The development capacity expansion plan, including PR plan of individual ASEAN states, also has been re-optimizing. So we are not only looking at the national power development planning anymore, so it's not as a standalone and national planning anymore, but it's looked as a regional power development planning. So as the integrated ASEAN. And as I mentioned earlier, the economic viability of the interconnection project identified in AIMS-2, the previous study, has been confirmed by these AIMS-3 studies, and they are even expanded for higher utilization to reach more region, more area in this region. And as I recall back, this study is a commitment from the highest authority on the energy corporation through the joint ministerial statement. Is also mentioned by Bakara as part of the implementation of the uptake phase 2. So it's also reflecting the commitment of the ASEAN to translate these studies into the real project, into the real implementation. But of course, further coordination, discussion, the involvement of all parties, not only government, policymakers, but also the private sector is very crucial to advance these studies, advance this multilateral power trade in region. I stop there. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Benny. I would like to next invite Dr. Akbar Swandaru, AIMS-3 Senior Research Analyst at ACE, to give a presentation on the solar and wind technical potential and projects identified by RE Resource Assessment. Please go ahead, Dr. Akbar.
Yeah, thank you. So good morning from Jakarta. First of all, on behalf of the ASEAN Centre for Energy, I would like to thank all the attendees, the ceremony organizer, and especially Mr. Hotmato Bakara to be here in this event. Here, I would like to present renewable energy resource assessment and its potential in ASEAN. So as you can see in the screen, the topic highlights prospective wind and solar project development sites in support of the effort to identify renewable generation capacity for wind and solar projects in ASEAN countries. The goal of this assessment is to support and to understand renewable energy potential in each of countries. So as perhaps some of you may aware, the topic is interrelated with our flagship project, the ASEAN Interconnection Masterplan study, as has been reported in the 38 ASEAN Ministers on Energy meeting. The study was aimed at identifying potential wind and solar sites in ASEAN and provide hourly wind and solar energy production. So as you can see in the slide, we know that the AIMS-3 provide an updated plan of regional transmission network that links the ASEAN power system with maximized utilization of regional renewable energy resource. Responding to the Apgcc target in order to meet 23% renewable energy mix by 2025 and achieving bilateral and multilateral power trades. Next slide, please. So a little bit piece of information about AIMS here is that the genesis of this study lies in the pursuit of the realization of the ASEAN power grid and to promote interconnection and trade and an increased transmission capacity interconnection among and between the ASEAN member countries. The action was initiated with the introduction of AIMS-1 as per 17 AMEM in 1999 in Bangkok. The heads of ASEAN power utilities and authorities, or HAPUA, request to establish the ASEAN power grid through AIMS-3. The successful or AIMS-2 brought the introduction of AIMS-3 in the need of increasing inter-country cooperation between the ASEAN member states in the power sector with the objective of renewable energy integration, including the new renewable energy target to achieve a higher degree of shares of renewable energy. So we see that under the phase 1 of study, we primarily focus on working on capacity expansion planning and mainly focusing on renewable energy assessment. Through there, we're working on a little bit technical aspect and grid analysis, and eventually comes into the multilateral market analysis. Next slide, please. So this is a bit of view about the potential that to be utilized beyond PDP. So according to the screen here, you may see that ASEAN do have potential of gross capacity around 8,000 gigawatt alone and wind around 300 gigawatt. So this is a piece of illustration about what we've done in the AIMS-3 study. So if you take a look here in the left slide, so you can see that this is a solar technical potential that we were conducting. So it's basically a way of estimating the country's available solar resource potential to generate electricity by applying a limitation and some offset on topographic environmental land use constraint. So using the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, Rcre Explorer, we conducted the analysis and produced some of the outcome, which you can see in the right side. So this is a piece of example work that we conducted for the Indonesian region. Next slide, please. So this is a piece of information, identified result for the ASEAN solar map. So 10 countries we were identified, and we found that they actually have some potential for the solar. So if you take a look example here for the Laos PDR region, so you can see from the resource map, it's to be noted that East border region are having relatively better solar resource. Another example is that for the Malaysia Peninsula, for example, the resource map are to be noted at the coastal line, which are having better solar resource. For Myanmar, in the other hand, resource map are to be noted found that central and southern region are having relatively better solar resource. So this is part of that we are conducted, and this is that we are using for identifying the potential of renewable energy in the region for the ASEAN. Next slide, please. So aside of solar assessment, we are also working on identifying wind potential in the ASEAN region. So this is the overall view of what we found so far, the study that we conducted together. And you can see that, as for example, here there are 10 countries, and you can see that several landscape of potential that have been identified. So if you go here, for example, you can see from the Cambodia, it is noted that the higher elevation region that has a better potential wind are to be found. And for Laos, for example, we see that as well in the screen. The central position are somewhat has higher wind speed and range that have higher chance for better utilization of wind. So this is a piece of example of the work that we have conducted so far. Next slide, please. So after the previous work, you may see that we conducted a study capacity expansion planning, and to see how much is that the maximum possible renewable energy can be injected in the region. So from the given illustration, we can understand that ASEAN has historically relied on fossil fuel, oil plant, and expected to continue in the future. So as a for example, you may see that by 2017, the ASEAN power capacity mix was dominated by gas, followed by coal, and then oil. And this fossil fuel combined somewhere around 70% of the total. So other than hydropower, which account around 20% of the power mix, we see that other renewable energy are still significant. Other business as usual, the hydropower is expected to increase and gain greater shares of the mix. However, you may see that coal will increase its importance in the ASEAN power mix, as it is estimated it grows around 4% annually from 2025 until 2040. You can see that this is the overall view of the energy mix that we can see in the next 4 years. Next slide, please. So this is the overall view of the possible solar distribution per the ASEAN member state. So I'm giving this as a piece of example. So you may see that according to the screen, particularly if you take a look in the left slide, you may see that AIMS3 study found that the distribution of around 63 gigawatt of solar into each ASEAN member state are given. And according to what we found so far, we could see that somehow Vietnam dominates the solar potential among the ASEAN countries. However, through our assessment, the RAS assessment, we could see that through here, the distribution of solar potential are shown are fairly more distributed. So this gives us an understanding that each ASEAN member state do have a fairly possible opportunity for clean energy transition, achieving the new 2025 ASEAN renewable energy target with a total installed power capacity up to 35% and even more. Next slide, please. So we go a little bit more findings here. We also assess some potential job creation, and we put an example here, the projection in 2040. So we see that the AIMS3 study suggests that, again, we have a potential job creation that we can gain so far. So for example, you may see that we segregate the scenario into those solar jobs and wind jobs. So you may see that we also provide a more detailed assessment, which also take a look some of type of job, which is you can see in the slide: project planning, procurement, manufacturing, transport, operation and maintenance, and so on and so forth. So we see that this is part of what we find so far, and it's a very interesting to see that job creation do have here in our finding that which one of the benefit for having higher renewable energy penetration in the region. Next slide, please. So there's so many things here, but I will try to make it short. So in general, renewable energy has a key role to play in the decarbonization of energy sectors, and this resulting the mitigation of the climate change effect. So to better illustrate the potential impact of the renewables, AIMS3 finds the potential avoided emission under the two scenario, which I put it as example here: the base case or the business as usual, and the ASEAN Rcre Target. So ACE has found so far that climate pledge under the Paris Agreement in relation to the national energy plans and actual development trends. So after our findings here, you may say that in many cases, the nationally determined contributions, or the NDCs, have not kept up with the recent rapid growth in the renewables. However, our uptake target, or the high Rcre target, could help alleviate the process, which enabled the ASEAN member state to reach closer to the greenhouse gas emission avoided each year as a result of renewable energy deployment in the country. Next slide, please. So we move to the points taken away here. So as you may know, in a general, ASEAN is rich with wind and solar technical potential. There are around 8,000 gigawatt of gross capacity for solar alone, and also there are around 300 gigawatt of wind alone. So we see that to achieve the high RE target or the uptake RE target, we need that we should install somewhere around 80 gigawatt of solar and around 12 gigawatt of wind by 2025, which means that we need lots of a contribution of wind and solar in the region. So this is also very good information to see that how much is that the renewable energy needed in the region, and therefore private sector that need to be involved in this play. So according to a study, the inclusion of higher RE and interconnection obviously provide benefits in the region. And some particular findings that we found so far under the high RE scenario, there will be a potential cost saving up to 7 billion USD compared to the business as usual case. And furthermore, it is estimated that there are around 100 and 200,000 of renewable energy jobs created by 2040. And even in the high RE scenario, we also found that it can goes up more, around 700,000 renewable energy jobs. So under the uptake target, significant potential of avoided fuel by 2040, it was found that around 50 million tons, 2 million tons of oil, and 13,000 million meter cubic of natural gas could be reduced, and therefore reducing the dependency of region or the use of import fuels. So finally, from here, we have captured a point that need to be taken to understand well the key trends and the outlook, including its challenges and possible opportunities for renewable energy to grow. So it should be noted that the ASEAN interest in energy transition. However, this transition is not only from the fossil fuel to renewable energy, but also shifting conventional fossil fuel technology to a cleaner option. So I think this comes to the end of my slide. So could you please move again? And I think we see that this is the end of presentation. So I'll turn over to the organizer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Akbar, for that very interesting information about the potential for development of solar and wind specifically in the region. That's been a lot of information already, and so now we have the opportunity to hear from all of you what you're thinking about all of this. So we have a quick poll for you, and we're going to go question by question. So here you can see the links and how to get into this poll. So if you just keep that open, we have a total of 6 quick questions for you. The first one, you can go ahead, get in there and start answering. Which RE technology would you like to invest in? We've got 2 options here. We have solar and wind for the purpose of this conversation. So let's see. Go ahead and get into that poll and start making your selections. Great. It looks like there's a strong preference amongst everyone here for solar, which is hovering in the 70%, high 70 percentile of selections made, and the rest being wind. Thank you for that. Let's go to the next question. Let's get a bit more specific. So for solar, which areas for solar project sites would you consider most interesting to invest in? There's quite a long list here of spaces in the region. What do you think? What is the most interesting to invest in as far as solar project sites? Right, it looks like there's some strong interest in Vietnam and also some strong interest in Indonesia, sites there. And then, of course, there's other interest in all the sites that we have listed. Philippines is coming in there as well, and Singapore also. Great, let's go to the next question. So how many megawatts of a solar project would you consider investing in at the selected site? So the site that you preferenced, what would you target as the size, the megawatt size of the project? What do you think? Of course, there's no right and wrong answer here. It's just your own ideas. So it looks like the most popular selection is the 25 to 50 megawatts, followed by the 50 to 100. And we're going down as we're going up, right? So 100 to 200 and then over 200. Alrighty, next question. So that was all about solar. What about wind? Which areas for wind project sites would you consider most interesting to invest in? And I know there was a high preference for solar in the first question, but let's talk about wind as well. What do you think is the most interesting project site? Looks like we've got significant interest in a lot of places, including Vietnam, Laos PDR, Philippines, Thailand. Let's go to the next question. You might be able to anticipate this one. For wind projects, how many megawatts would you consider investing at the selected site? It looks like the most popular choice is 50 to 100, followed by 100 to 200, 25 to 50, and very few selecting over 200 megawatts. Thank you for that. And the final question. I believe you can pick two choices here. What is the main reason that you use to select a site? High technical potential, RE incentive or feed-in tariffs, infrastructure availability, or the existence of electricity markets? Looks like the most popular choice is the RE incentive or feed-in tariffs being available. And then two that are very close, infrastructure availability and high technical potential. And then the one that seems to be the least popular choice is the existence of electricity markets. Oh, and we have a shift. Infrastructure availability has taken over the most popular spot. Okay. Well, thank you for that. Thank you so much for your inputs on the poll. It's very interesting to see how people are thinking about engaging in the development of solar and wind in the region and the elements and aspects that go into that consideration. Up next, I would like to invite Mr. Pitun Juntip, the RA planning expert for USAID Clean Power Asia project, to present the phase 1 key results on capacity and expansion and interconnections identified from modeling results, including preliminary prioritization criteria. Go ahead, PJ.
Hi, Jen. Thank you so much. So my name is Pitun Juntip. I will present the key result of the M3 study and the interconnection identified from the study. You have seen a lot of intense information of the study from Benny, also from Dr. Akbar as well. It's really intense information since the full report is more than like 3,000 pages long now. So that's why sometimes it's difficult. So on my presentation, I would like to give some kind of like zoom in into the key element of the study. And then you can see something that could be like could be see it closely. So we can start from now. Next, please. I will go along with the recap on the study scenario again to see some key features, and then addressing the key results from the M3 studies, and also show you some links between the RE resource assessment and also with the energy modeling that we have done. We have done like two kinds of energy modeling. The first one is capacity expansion planning. Another one is production cost simulation. The last one, we also do the socio-economic and environmental analysis. And we, the fourth one, the fourth topic, I will give some what I could learn from the studies and the link between the result. And the last one, I will give you the identified interconnection from the study. Next, please. Let me recap again on the study scenario because I may have seen some question already on the percent share of VRE penetration. So for the base case where we are focusing on the current energy planning and the ASEAN's member state PDP. So right now is ASEAN country have like the share of VRE in terms of total generation by 3 to 4% by 2020. And this figure, if we do nothing, is kind of like business as usual. It will go up to only 8% by 2040. The second case that we call the optimum RE case, we try to explore the current energy system where we have like the thermal power plant like coal and natural gas. And we could see how much VRE could be like nationally add up into to system. So we found out that it could be up to 9% by 2025. However, ASEAN didn't have like the long-term targets for VRE, especially solar and wind by 2040. So that's why we do the extrapolating the figures from 2025 up to 2040. The third scenario that we call the ASEAN RE targets. Actually, the number that we talk is to achieve the 23 RE map by 2025. This figure is the total primary energy mix. So by this, if we back into the power sectors, we can see that the power sector needs to be achieved by 10 to 12% of VRE by 2025. And again, since there's no long-term targets, our extrapolated by 2040, the share of VRE will account for 15%. The last one is the high RE case, where we try to explore the opportunity to maximize the VRE in the system to go beyond the high RE targets But however, we still keep the the midterm target of like 2025, but the long-term one we are seeking for to achieve like 25 to 30% by 2040 as the regional figures. Next, please. Yeah, what Dr. Akbar has mentioning is about the result of the RE resource assessment. There are like 4 outcomes on this process. The first one, we quantify the technical potential of solar and wind in terms of like gigawatt and terawatt hours as the individual country and regional as well. By this, yeah, Dr. Akbar already mentioned that we identify like 62 sites. However, it come up with 200 sites for solar and another 200 sites for wind initially, but we narrow down to 40 sites for solar and 20 sites for wind across the ASEAN country. And then, since this one have been identified, the data have been input to the capacity expansion planning. Yeah, in order to see how much the electricity could be generated to serve the electricity need in terms of like individual country level and regional level. The third outcome of this is the hourly solar and wind profile. Some country, the hourly data and wind profile is not exist yet. So that's why we work with the consultants. Is the AWS True Power is another subcontract of us to produce and then to develop the beautiful map that you have seen. And we also develop the hourly profile for those 62 sites around ASEAN country. Yeah, and this one needs to be injected to the production cost simulation. The last one that we get, we also work closely with our consultant AWS True Power with support from NREL National Lab from Colorado to identify the projected levelized cost of energy in order to provide the cost to the capacity expansion and see the learning curve from these technologies. So by this, we conduct the energy modeling for all 4 scenarios, up to the socio-economic and environmental analysis to see the benefit of having the higher VRE penetration. Next, please. For the key result here, I will go one by one easily. So we know that once the ASEAN integrated the system together, we can see the lower system cost. We can see the both 4 scenarios, especially the last one. It could be promote the high RE investment and provide the social benefit of the as well as reduce the greenhouse gas emission as well. Another set that we could see is that the results show that it is possible to set and achieve the higher RE targets, which account for 25 to 30% of the VRE in generation mix by 2040. And the last one, we can see that the high RE scenarios, yeah, they utilize only 1% of the wind and solar technical potential. The 62 site is account for only 1%, and then we still have the plenty of them that didn't use, but only 1% of them can help to achieve the high RE targets. And the high RE targets is, yeah, as Penny gives you the detailed table on the economic analysis, we see that the high RE scenario provide the lowest system cost compared to other cases. And then for the interconnection identified, the study has been identified for like 19 interconnection with ASEAN countries with no significant impact to the reliability and the stability of the power system. So come up to the regional modeling. So by this, we can see that once ASEAN member state has been connected to each other by having that we call ASEAN power grid, we can see that the system could be utilized and sharing the unreserved margin for each country. For example, for Laos, they have like the during the wet season, they have the high unused reserve margin that could be used and export to Vietnam. That is one example. And then we can see that once the peak demand has been aggregated together, it could like shifting the period of the peak demand and also fatten the shape of the peak demand as well. By this, it could be increase the utilization rate of the power plant, make the system more economic. And the last one, we can see that RE available in different time zones. For example, for the Philippines, they have their time is ahead like almost like 1 and 2 hours ahead from Bangkok, and then when the sun shine, and then they could be like produce the electricity to the another time zone that could be utilize RE resources in different time zone. Next, please. So I think the outcome that we have seen is that with the support from NREL, we also developed the tool that we call the Southeast Asia Renewable Energy Data Explorer tool, in the power sector, where we can visualize the technical potential in the GIS information. This one we use for verify the RE resource assessment result that get from the AWS to power that the consultant that they have been identified. Once we know that we have the better understanding of the solar and wind technical potential in terms of like the country level, and also with the regional level as well. And then for the gap or the lesson learned that we could see, ASEAN have no official long-term of the RE targets in power sectors in regional level and some countries level. By this, there is no decision made on determining the long-term RE targets, even like for the both the M3 and the ASEAN Energy Outlooks number 6. Both study has been presented at the SOME, the senior energy meeting for the ASEAN, and then also from the AMEM this year. However, the decision didn't make because like the two studies have been proposed like 4 scenarios that could be in line between these two studies, but we didn't make which way or which scenario that ASEAN member state would like to carry on and to be implemented. For the approval process, it's not clear about the process of the approval and agreement to set the long-term target for ASEAN and how to allocate them at the country level. Next, please. By this, what could be get here? You can get like the interconnection identified. It could be it could be the result from the two phases here. The first one that we call capacity expansion planning, where we have the RE resource assessment, capacity expansion modeling that our consultant using the Pexels model. Also with the production cost modeling that we use the GE map. And then the last one, we did conduct the socio-economic environmental analysis. The capacity expansion provide the interconnection needed for the MS in the different horizontal years in the futures, like the 2025, 30, 35, and 40. And then we did recheck with the grid analysis how in order to see the grid stability and reliability. We have done the steady state analysis in order to kind of like double check interconnection identify. So that's why we say that there is no significant impact on the interconnection identify and also achieve the high RE targets here. I think for next step, you can learn more for Benny's presentation next, but I would say that the next step is that we may come up with the prioritization criteria, and we may need to like discuss with AMS as well as with Hapur utility representative as the Hapur working group, all of them, in order to come up with high priority interconnection, or how to select the interconnection that could be implemented, and we can discuss, and then we can facilitate somehow to get the transmission built. Next, please. Yeah, this one, I think, as I mentioned before, yeah, we have like laid out to 19 interconnection, and then yeah, we have to have some preliminary criteria that we do not have time to mention here, but yeah, we use some of them. But yeah, I think we could learn more in the next step. Next slide, please. Yeah, by this one, I think yeah, all of like 19 interconnection laid out here. But the key observation here is I would like to zoom in for like 3 interconnection here. The first one is between Laos and Vietnam. As I mentioned earlier, Laos has a lot of like unused reserve margin in the wet season that could be like exported to Vietnam. Yeah, the model has been designed to add more capacity of the interconnection there in the mid zone of Laos to the mid-north of Vietnam, and also link between south of Laos and the south of Vietnam. That is the 2 interconnection. And then the second one is between Sumatra and Peninsula Malaysia. Since Sumatra, they have a lot of potential of solar that could be facilitate the south region zone like Peninsula Malaysia and the Singapore country. Yeah, they are small country, but the electricity need for the future is quite high. So that's why Sumatra will be the key generators in order to put the south region to achieve the high RE targets in the long run. Yeah, and then on the right hand side, you can see that we have the interconnection between Sabah and Sarawak. So by this, there is like the model suggests that there's 2-way power flow between these 2 islands in order to facilitate both islands to achieve the RE targets, and also facilitate to have the power exchange between 2 islands and also transfer to another island. So by this, there is like kind of like 3 highlights that we have by the modeling work. So I think it should be better to have like more in-depth discussion with utilities and the energy planner with ASEAN later. Recently, we have like 3 meetings with RESS and Renewable Energy Subsector Net Working Group of ASEAN, REPP, Regional Energy Planning and Policy, and we just had the webinar with Harbour Working Group yesterday. So I think we still need more to have in-depth discussion with them in order to move on to create the implementation plan of the AIM3. Next, please. Yeah, I think it is my I'm done with my presentation. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, PJ. As you said, that's a lot of information that we've gotten from you and the speakers before. So I just want to remind everyone to put questions in the Q&A, because we're coming up on a panel discussion. And I know there are some questions in there already, and we thank you for that. Now that we've heard a lot about what's in the AIM3 study, where the interconnection points may be, what future scenarios might look like, let's talk a little bit about what are the next steps, what are the requirements to realize the interconnection, what are the opportunities for private sector and for donors, how can we potentially move this forward? And we have some wonderful panel participants with us today, and I would like to introduce Ms. Dana Kenny, the Chief of Party for the USAID Clean Power Asia project, to facilitate our panel discussion together. Go ahead, Dana.
Thank you very much, Jen. And I'd like to welcome our panel participants. And even though a couple of them have been introduced briefly at the beginning by Jen, I would like to reintroduce them and why they're on this panel. So first of all, thank you to Mr. Housekeeping Issues, the Secretary in charge of the HAPUA Secretariat, the heads of ASEAN Power Utilities and Authorities, or HAPUA, promotes among its members to strengthen cooperation in order to strengthen regional energy security through interconnection development, enhancing private sector participation, and encouraging equipment standardization and other activities to enhance both the quality and reliability of electricity supply among the ASEAN member states. HAPUA is considered the owner of the AIM3 study and oversees the ASEAN Power Grid Consultative Committee, or Apgcc. Dr. Santisuk Phipachan has served as the Deputy Director General of the Department of Energy, Policy and Planning in Laos PDR's Ministry of Energy and Mines since last summer in 2020, following 8 years as the Director of the Power System Policy and Planning Division at MEM. She's a member of the Apgcc and of a technical task force for the Laos, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore Power Integration Project, or LTMS PIP, which you'll hear about in a presentation right after the short break. And then, as you were introduced earlier, to Benny Suryadi, who works at the ASEAN Centre for Energy. In his role as manager of the Power, Fossil Fuel, etc. division, he's leading the ASEAN Interconnection Masterplan Study 3 for ACE, who are managing the study on behalf of Papua. He also leads the ASEAN Climate Change and Energy Project, which is called ACCEPT, a first integrated project on energy and climate change in ASEAN, and previously led the ASEAN Energy Outlook 6 that Tun Juntup mentioned, which is their flagship study on energy projections for the region. And it was accepted or launched, as you might say, at AMEM last November. So I'd like to start with a couple of questions, overview questions, some of which may have been asked by participants and some of which I think are important to cover. We'll take a few moments of the panel for that and then invite additional questions to be submitted if we have time. So I'd like to start with Mr. Bakara. You know, historically, as I just mentioned, Papua has always been the center of development for the ASEAN power grid. And what comments would you have about the importance of the ASEAN Interconnection Masterplan study in informing the future of the ASEAN power grid? Mr. Bakara.
Sorry, Dana, can you repeat?
How important is the ASEAN Interconnection Masterplan Study 3, AIMS 3, in defining the future of the ASEAN power grid? How will the Apgcc and Papua take it into account, and how will it inform the further future development of the ASEAN power grid?
Okay. Yeah, I think we historically, we need to take a note that in past, Papua realized that that it was the important player who pushes forward the development of ASEAN power grid. So this could be since 2024, 2004, yeah. The adoption of Papua a new structure was made to facilitate and provide more efficient ways to develop ASEAN power grid. AIMS 2 was back then assigned to Working Group 2, transmission comprising 3 sub-working groups, namely Power Interconnection, sub-working group, and also Operation and Maintaining sub-working group, O&M and sub-working group, and then the Transmission Pricing sub-working group. Now we will move forward. The successful of AIMS 2 brought the introduction of AIMS 3 in the need of increasing the inter-country cooperations between ASEAN and member states in power sectors. This we work then was designed with the objective of the renewable energy integration, including the 23% ASEAN Rcre target on every energy mix by 2025 to a higher degree in the future through power system interconnection. So AIMS 3 also covers the exploration and of an opportunity and the benefit of having higher VRE and potential in emergence of new and more sustainable technologies with a lower cost in the future or advancing multilateral power trade. Yeah, Dana? Does it answer your question? Sorry.
Yes, thank you very much. You know, one of the things that one of the questions that was asked by participants was understandably trying to understand the various roles of the organizations, the APGCC and other working groups in Papua. I know there is one that deals with generation and transmission. Can you comment on what the roles of these various organizations will be in realizing the identified interconnection projects and how you'll interact with the different countries in bringing those to fruition? How do you see the role in AIMS 3 different than maybe how you saw it in AIMS 2? And how might you work with donors and governments to get those projects funded, if that's a role for Papua?
Oh, okay. And then how we can coordinate with the other countries or countries in ASEAN actually, especially the utility, and also the APGCC. Actually, Papua itself in the organizations of the APGCC is one of the members. So the APGCC gather the utility and the government's, elements, so they can together, put the actions in Papua. Actually, Papua will do it technically, meaning that Papua will be trying to propose how we will develop this multilateral power trades through also developing the ASEAN power grid, through the using the results from the AIMS 3. Now we also put AIMS 3 also will be the base for the basis for our next planning for the multilateral power trading, to also enhancing and developing the ASEAN power grid. And how about the we can have connection with the the international organization who can support us. Actually, we will also collaborate with ASEAN Secretariat and also Asia. There will be sometimes ACE will be also the our implementing agencies, as what we have been doing with USAID actually.
Thank you for that, Mr. Bakara. And since you mentioned ACE, I'd like to ask Benny, what would you like to add to that in terms of the next steps? I know you're going to cover that later, but what role do you see ACE playing with APGCC and Papua? And how do you see the connection being made to the policymakers and planners in country, especially how this new target, that is more solar and wind being part of the 23% target, how is that going to be considered in the country's PDPs or target setting, in your view, Benny?
Right. Thank you very much, Dan.
We're having some trouble hearing you, Benny, so if others are having trouble.
More in the presentation that after break, but I can share at this point. My video that can hear me better now. Can you hear me better now, Dana?
Yes, it's better. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. I turn off my video for a better connection. As you say, I mean, the owner of the APG and AIMS 3 study is sit within the Papua, and ACE act to support Papua, also APGCC to implement this. So this is the first point that I would like to also echo against. But then what is the next steps and how to implement that? We in ASEAN have the target needs to be achieved by 2025, and this AIMS 3 provide a basis, a reference on how this can be achieved. And As also as mentioned that we will not able to achieve it as the individual countries. We will only able it if ASEAN is collectively work together to achieve it. So we will not look it unto as the individual power development plan, but as a regional power development plan. So this is the role that ACE is playing in the supporting HAPWA, supporting the Apgcc, supporting renewable energy subsector network on how to translate the finding that we have from these studies, the purpose interconnection that we have, the identified interconnection that we have, and then translate it into what we can so call it the real projects, the real interconnection projects, the real additional installed capacities coming on board being built by the region. By region, I mean it's not only looking into the individual country perspective, but as a whole from now until 2025. So this is what the role that we are playing. We are intensifying our communication, supporting the HAPWA, engage with the Apgcc, the ASEAN Secretariat, the Renewable Energy Subsector Network, and to discuss it at regional level, and also at the national level, where ACE is also being invited to have a discussion with the countries to kind of, okay, we have a finding from AIM study, what can be injected into the national power development plan as well, which project that can be materialized, which project can be the priorities for the country. So this is the thing that we are doing, of course, with a strong consultation, a partnership with the HAPWA as the owner of this ASEAN Power Grid. I stop there. Thank you, Dana.
Thank you very much, Benny. And Dr. Santisuk, as a member of the Apgcc, what do you see as the most important issues to address and barriers to overcome in order to realize these interconnection projects? Speaking from someone who works at the regional level with the ASEAN organizations as well as within your own country, and having been part of a process for the Laos, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore projects. What would you comment as the most important issues to address, and how does one come to bring the people to the table to help interconnection project become realized?
Good morning, Diana. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Santisuk.
Sorry, yes, I can hear you now. It was very faint before. Thank you. But actually now I'm not hearing you. I don't know if others are having a problem, but please continue.
Okay, thank you. Regarding to your question, because right now we have the National Power Development Plan, because it's in PDP. This is our plan for domestic and interconnection for export to neighboring country. As you mentioned, AM3 is we already joined the study, and we have some potency of the RE to connect to our generations. And this is for domestic use of 1,300 megawatt by year 2020, and the rest of power we will export, and we already have involved with some country GMS and also power export to Malaysia, and under the study for export to Singapore. This is what we have done, and from the bilateral power export like Laos and Thailand, and also Laos, Vietnam, and also MOU side and PPA side with Laos, Cambodia is under construction. The project this is ongoing, and on the project is we have a plan for step by step, like from the National Power Development Plan. We have hydropower is 65%, and 50% is about small power, and the 5% is for IE. And many is like like power, solar, but we have the power of extended rather than export to Vietnam. This is all the little. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Santisuk. So what would you say is the key to seeing a successful interconnection? I know you're going to talk about that several country project in a moment after the break. But what would you say are the key elements of succeeding in having an interconnection project actually be realized? This is actually could be a quick question for all of you before we finish this panel discussion. Because to realize this plan, it's going to require simultaneously developing MOUs between countries, synchronizing the grids, or at least the grid codes and the regulations, and identifying funding. And there are many transmission lines that were identified under the APG AIMS-2 study that were never realized, and maybe there wasn't funding. So I'd like to ask each of you in closing, because this encapsulates several of the questions we received so far, is how to accomplish those simultaneously and actually realize both the power projects and the transmission lines by whatever is needed by 2025 to meet that RE goal, and also to meet the needs of each country in facilitating more trade. Just a last comment, because we'll have another discussion period at the end. So I'd like to invite first Mr. Bakara to make some final comments on that. What will be key to achieving these goals in such a short period of time? And then Benny and Dr. Santisuk.
Okay, thank you. Normally, when we have plan, we have National Power Development Plan. We have like 2021 to 2025. How many projects that we plan to develop? Like we have the domestic supply, and currently for Laos is hydropower 100%, no 90%, and we have like for generation is like a seasonal 5 months for wet season. We have a lot of hydro, but 7 months is we have some power to import from Thailand. This is what we have done. And what the project and is mean, if the project is under construction, it mean they have plan for supply to the domestic, or they have PPA to export. And for the interconnection right now, we have the transmission line for connect to Cambodia for export by 2024 and 2025. 2024 is about 1,100 megawatt, and 2025 will start the Thermon project with 1,800 megawatt until 2027. This is for interconnection. But normally our policy is a support for the system to system connection. Like Laos and Thailand, we have only 115 kV from EDL system. But for IPP export, they have 500 kV or 230 kV, like a generation direct to connect to the ICAT system. And for Laos and Vietnam, we have like a, how to say, that one is isolate, because we cannot do synchronize. The synchronize is only EDL and ICAT, they do the synchronize. For EDL to Vietnam, they have like a generation to transmission line, like isolate. And this is what we have done. The project will be realized, it means depend on the PPA with the country that export. But for domestic, they have PPA with EDL to buy the power for the domestic use, or they have like an economic zone or some web data, or beacon is like a industrial. This is the big customer in Laos. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Santisuk. Any final comments, Mr. Bakara, about the key elements to succeed in achieving all of these plans in the next 5 years? Excuse me.
Okay, Adena, thank you for the question. Actually, now Papua through the Apgcc phase 2 for the APG program area. We already incorporate AIMS results on trying to also to make it align. As you know that the AIMS 3 conducted maybe around 2 years ago. Yeah, it started around 2 years ago, and we will need also to have other feasibility study with the countries of ASEAN that the interconnection project will be say in the country, and then we will select again which interconnection line to be the priority to build in the region, especially in trying to support the multilateral power trade. Actually, that is one of our action plan, especially in 2021. We are trying to have further study, a review on technical and commercial feasibility of the APG projects, based on also the findings of the APG studies, including the AIMS 3. That means we are trying to make it more close to countries' demands, and then that is, I think, the key. If we can AIMS 3, if we can make it trying to select the project that is really close to the planning of, say, such or a respective country of ASEAN, and then we can also realize this in I believe in not long, Lena, and then also I think we need to also have communication again and coordination very close with our utilities in ASEAN and also the governments. So this is maybe the most important thing, that all the stakeholders for the APG will have the same view on how we trying to achieve our targets, or how to also build the projects that already planned, especially in AIMS 3. Thank you, Dan.
Thank you very much. And just invite a last comment from Benny for this panel on that question, and then we'll wrap up.
Thank you, Dana. I think Pak Bakara has already mentioned, and then it's very important for us is, I mean, our pipe target is only 4 years and a half. It's going to be from today until 2025. And as presented earlier, there is a significant amount of the capacity in renewable energy capacities need to be put in place from today until 2025 as part of this finding from the AIMS 3 study. So the real hammer is how to bring this finding, this study into or the implementation, and then ACE is having an intensive discussion with the Hapua, as Pak Bakara mentioned, is being translated into the plan under the Apgcc. Apgcc means the commitment of the countries, commitment of the region. So we will work to translate it into the real project for the next years to come. I stop there. Thank you, Dana.
Thank you. And I'll close this panel. We tried to incorporate several of your questions, but just know that there will be another presentation after the break on the LTMS project. Benny will also be talking a little bit in more detail about some of the actions that need to be taken towards implementation and developing an implementation plan. So all of your questions can be shared with for the final discussion. So I'll close this panel and thank our panelists, Mr. Bakara, Dr. Satisuk, and Benny. Terima kasih, Kapkunka, Kapchai Lalai. Thank you very much.
Terima kasih.
Thank you, Dana, and thank you to all of our panelists. We have all now earned a break. So we're going to go on a 10-minute break, and then those presentations that Dana mentioned will be happening after the break. The times on the slide are a little off. We're just a couple minutes behind at the moment, but not to worry. So we will take a 10-minute break. It is currently 40 past the hour here in Bangkok. So at 50 past the hour, we were back on. So everyone just take a break. And I think we have some video entertainment for you coming in during the break. So if you just want to chill and check that out, go for it. So we'll see you in 10 minutes, everyone. Thank you.
Energy consumption across Southeast Asia is projected to double by 2040. Continued reliance on and expansion of conventional power plants will have far-reaching negative impacts throughout the region. Since 2016, the United States Agency for International Development, or USAID, Clean Power Asia initiative has worked with Southeast Asian countries to tackle these challenges and encourage power sector investment in renewable energy sources.
Southeast Asia faces challenges related to air pollution, climate change, and energy security, supply and resilience. Though Southeast Asian countries are all at different stages of development of their energy sectors, they do face similar issues. Over the past 5 years, we've collaborated with diverse stakeholders, partners, and regional organizations to overcome policy and technical barriers to the deployment of clean energy technologies, to accelerate the regional transition to a high-performing and low-carbon power sector.
Supported by USAID, the third ASEAN Interconnection Masterplan study, or AIMS-3, will become the basis for regional planning and development of the ASEAN power grid. It will help Southeast Asian nations reduce costs, ensure the security and resilience of power supplies, and increase access to untapped renewable energy sources.
AIMS-3 has successfully identified generation and cross-border transmission investment required to have reached or exceed ASEAN's 23% renewable energy goal by 2025 and reduce the power cost for all of ASEAN member states.
USAID Clean Power Asia has also assisted Laos in developing Integrated Resource and Resilience Planning, or IRRP.
The Integrated Resource and Resilience Planning Capacity Building Program has enabled Laos to develop for the first time a long-term power sector planning that combines both domestic and export plans, meets multiple energy, economic, environmental, and social objectives, and increase the power sector resilience.
USAID Clean Power Asia has contributed to the proposal, adoption, and implementation of over 15 new policies and regulations across Southeast Asia. USAID Clean Power Asia has worked with the government of Laos to embrace open, transparent, and best value energy procurement practices with the country's first ever solar auction.
I would like to thank USA's support of the first pilot solar auction in Laos. From auction design to preparing for implementation, the solar auction will improve fair and transparent power project procurements, obtain the most competitive tariff, and reduce project approval time.
USAID Clean Power Asia has contributed to preventing over 30 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent in greenhouse gas emissions being released into the air. USAID is working with Thailand's Office of the Energy Regulatory Commission, or OERC, to develop regulations and technical standards to ensure the safety and performance of battery energy storage system installations and operations.
The government of Thailand and our utilities want to promote battery storage to create sustainable power and improve reliability. Supported by USAID Clean Power Asia, This collaboration on the development of technical standards for Thailand is an excellent opportunity to promote the deployment of battery energy storage system, which will strengthen the country's energy security and support the competitiveness of Thai industry.
To facilitate grid-connected renewable energy financing, USAID Clean Power Asia developed and published financial models allowing developers and corporations to identify critical factors that impact profitability and bankability. In total, over the past 5 years, USAID Clean Power Asia has mobilized over $7 billion of investment in renewable energy. USAID experts assisted Apgcc to develop a business model to install rooftop solar systems on stores in Thailand. As part of the Asia Enhancing Development and Growth Through Energy, or Asia EDGE Power Sector Learning Series, USAID Clean Power Asia and partners held webinars attended by hundreds of participants from around the world. The series informed, equipped, and encouraged adoption and deployment of distributed photovoltaics, or DPV, in the region and beyond. USAID also advised Thailand's Bgrim Power on a suitable financing structure for the company's first utility-scale solar project in Vietnam. In total, USAID Clean Power Asia has facilitated nearly 10,000 megawatts of renewable energy capacity over the past 5 years.
Today's energy sector is transforming before our very eyes as modern technologies enable us to economically harness renewable sources of energy produced by the sun and the wind. USAID Clean Power Asia has worked tirelessly across the region to learn from our partners' efforts and bring America's best science and technology to Southeast Asia to strengthen energy security and help our partners achieve their sustainable development goals. USAID will build on this success by helping our partners understand the life cycle costs and benefits of energy sector investment decisions. Together with our partners, I am confident we will accelerate the region's energy transformation and further expand access to critical energy technologies that are clean, smart, and state-of-the-art.
With over $7 billion in investment mobilization, nearly 10,000 megawatts of new renewable energy online, and over 15 new policies and regulations, the USAID Clean Power Asia program ends with Southeast Asia poised for the next exciting stage of renewable energy development. None of this would have been possible without the collaborative efforts of all USAID Clean Power Asia partners.
So welcome back, everyone. I hope you had a wonderful break, and we are here now for the next part of our webinar. I would like to start by inviting Dr. Santisuk Pimpachan, the Deputy Director General of the Department of Energy Policy and Planning for the Laos Ministry of Energy and Mines, to give a presentation on lessons learned and implementation challenges on Laos, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore interconnection from Papua perspective and experience. Please go ahead, Dr. Santisuk. Dr. Santisuk, are you back with us? Dr. Santisuk, have you come back? Are you with us? Dr. Santisuk, can you hear me? Okay, maybe Dr. Santisuk will reconnect here. In the meantime, let us go to our next presenter. And we can circle back to Dr. Santisuk when we've reconnected with her. Oh, there she is. Dr. Santisuk, are you here? Yes, okay. So I invite you to start your presentation, please.
Yes, okay, please show my presentation. Sorry, just walk out a bit, yeah, sorry. Yes, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Santisuk Pimpachan. I come from Department of Energy Policy and Planning, Ministry of Energy and Mines. Nice to meet you all. Today, I'm going to present about the lesson learned and challenges of implementing multilateral power trade LTM SPIP. Next slide, please. Yeah. This slide shows you the background for the LTM project. First, when we have the idea for LTM PIP, was modeled during a special summit in Manado, Indonesia by December 2013. The idea is to transfer power up to 100 megawatts from Laos PDR to Singapore via Malaysia and Thailand by using the existing transmission line grid network. LTM SPIP will serve as a pathfinder to complement existing effort to avoid the realizing the APG and the ASEAN Economic Community AEC by create opportunity for electricity trade beyond the neighboring border and expect to help the identify and resolve the issue effect on the cross-border electric trade in ASEAN. LTM PIP working group have 4 technical task force was formed in the November 2015 and look into technical, commercial, legal, and tariff aspect of the project. Next slide, please. This one is to show you the structure of LTM, and the leader of each group is like a technical with Malaysia, legal and regulation is Singapore, commercial arrangement is Thailand, and Laos is a tax and tariff. Next slide, please. This shows you the technical task force complete study by 2016, and we have a finding the study, and we divide with the phase 1 is a 2018 to 2019. This is a we call is the pilot project for the Spirit of ASEAN. Is a power trade up to 100 megawatt between Laos and Malaysia. Laos export to Malaysia via Thailand transit, and we have utilized the existing network and interconnection. And phase 2 or beyond by 2020, this is a will include Singapore when the second interconnection cable between Singapore and Malaysia is back in service. Next slide, please. And this is show the signing the MOU from the phase 1 at the 34th RMM. And we have the scope of cooperation to exploit the technical economic feasibility and viability for the cross-border power trade of the up to 100 megawatt from Laos PDR to Malaysia using the existing interconnection, exchange information on existing and plan for the electricity generation source and electric demand with each respective participant, identify the legal and regulation issue, explore the possible of the commercial arrangement for cross-border power trade. The valid MOU is about 5 years until 20 September 2021. Next slide, please. This one shows you the structure of commercial agreement for the phase 1. The energy per site and wheeling charge agreement we call is a EPWA. The approach of this is a utility entering into just one agreement we call is the EPWA. This is like a multilateral power trade because normally Laos we have export to some neighboring country. We call is that one is a bilateral, is a two country. But right now we have is a multilateral. The agreement is applied for the three utility and cover residual issue on matters such as commencement date for the agreement, condition, acceptance and obligation for the responsible owner country law and taxes, government law and procedure for the deadline with the disputed. And we have part 1 with energy sale and purchase between EDL and TNB. And part 2 is a billing chart between EDL, EGAT. This is what we have done before. And interconnection operate manual is IOM cover the operation of LTM energy transaction from EDL to TNB. Next slide, please. This slide shows you, as I mentioned from the answer the question, because we have like how to say national power development plan, and we have the government, we have energy policy plan that we mentioned. As I mentioned, for hydro we have 65%, and thermal is about 30%, and RE is about 5%. And our plan right now, they have some company is a sign MOU to do the study for solar, wind, and also biomass. And the project is a real life for the possible to develop and to mix like a combined cycle, or we call it a hybrid system. That one will be considered, but we have included in our plan is about 5% for the RE. Next slide, please. This slide shows you for the interconnection as we have right now. We have interconnection with EDC is a Cambodia, EVN is a Vietnam. This one we have like the interconnection with the near border, like 35 kV or 22 kV, and also 230 and 115 kV. And we also export to Myanmar for 22 kV medium voltage, and export to Thailand with from the EDL system 115 kV, and IPP direct export with 230 and 500 kV, and also connect with China with 110 kilovolt. This is on we have interconnection right now. Next slide, please. This slide shows you the physical flow by 2018 to 2019. As you can see that we have 115 kV from EDL system connect to Thailand, and Thailand to Malaysia with HVDC, and from and right now we have under the study between Laos, Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore is under the study with the working group. Next slide, please. Yeah, this one is to show you the commercial arrangement for the phase 1. As you can see that we have like Laos use the existing agreement, and Thailand and Malaysia also they have, and we use the EPWA for the, we call this for power export and energy per site and billing charge agreement. And this is the selling and transit and also receiver from the Malaysia. And next slide, please. And this slide show you for the LTM PIP 2.0, and we have a many meeting for the consultative for the team with the working group, and we also have discussed more for the power export to Malaysia and continue for export to Singapore. Next slide, please. And the lesson learned for the LTM PIP, as I mentioned from the earlier, that we have a successful venture of the multilateral energy trading in ASEAN with the Malaysia purchase electric power up to 100 megawatt from Laos via the existing Thailand transmission line. And we have start export by 2018 until September 2019. We have power is about, we have energy export about 24.93 gigawatt hour. This is for the LTM PIP. And during the 36th ASEAN Ministerial of Energy meeting in October 2018, on party agreed to continue and implementation of LTM PIP with a new extension term and propose for increase the capacity up to 300 megawatt with committed energy. On the party intent of extend term of EPWA for additional 2 years following with supplementary agreement for EPWA, and in propose for reflect this extension together with necessary amendment of EPWA. This is what we have done, and also we discuss about more the technical and commercial aspect, and in the LTM PIP 2.0 and the propose for supplement agreement on EPWA. Next slide, please. The way forward for us, because right now we have under the study together with Singapore, we call this LTMS PIP, and we have start for the working group working, and what we have the requirement is to import and sell electric in the to Singapore wholesale electric market commercial arrangement. We also have to focus for how to do the commercial with the bidding process. We have to sell with a fixed price or something that we have to consider, and also the possible of contacture of the framework to import electricity from Laos to Singapore with tax and tariff structure. And we have to discuss for the billing chart between Thailand and Malaysia also, and also some matter that is important. As I mentioned, for the export more to Singapore, we have to consider, because right now we have like a seasonal is a 5 months during the rainy season. Hydropower is we have more power, but during the dry season we need to have some power to support this, and we have under the discussion right now. Next slide, please. This project is like a pilot project to explore the cross-border power trade involved with 4 countries like Laos, Thailand, Malaysia, and Singapore. This is will serve at the like a multilateral power trade beyond to realize the APG. The challenger, this one we have to thinking about the technical, how we improve the system for export, and the second is also financial support and legal and regulation when we have power trade in Singapore, how we do for the bidding or fixed price export, and also harmonization for the standard. This is what I have been for you from our lesson learned that we have. This is on my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. If you have any question or some presentation is not clear, please feel free to ask me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Santisuk, for that presentation. And to echo what Dr. Santisuk just said, again, if you have questions, please do put them in the Q&A, because time for some discussion is coming. But first, I would like to invite back Benny Suryadi to do a quick presentation on the process, activities, and timeline for developing the implementation plan. And after that, we're going to have a bit more time for discussion. Benny, go ahead and maybe keep your video off so we have better connection, yeah?
All right. Thank you, Jen. I hope my audio is okay. So with the interest of time, I will try to make the presentation shorter. So if we can go to the slide number 4 or slide number 3, so we can just skip this point. Again, it's also skip this part. We'll go to the slide number 3, where I re-emphasize it again, that currently we have, yes, this slide, currently we have the current ASEAN Interconnection project. This is the result from the AIMS2, and then it's being progressing with the countries in the bilateral basis. And now we aim for more interconnection, not only bilateral, but also multilateral, by utilizing the high technical potential on VRE that we have in this region, be it coming from the solar or coming from the wind. Next slide, please. So that we could able to ensure to have more installed capacity in region to fulfill the demand of the region on the electricities. I mean, if you look at the various scenarios, they can see that how much the installed capacity needs to be injected in the region, or we can look into the 2025, around 4.5 years from today, the significant amount of wind and solar, so around to need to install at least 63 gigawatt of solar or 58 gigawatt wind of require in order for us to achieve this regional target. But then move to the next slide as we talking about this interconnection that is being presented before. So this slide makes to answer the question on how we facilitate the interconnection in the short term or target that we have up until 2025. As you can see in this slide, this cross-border transmission line was taken from the ASEAN Interconnection projects as shown before. It is being approved, being negotiated, being implemented by the countries. The AIMS3 findings show that its cross-border transmission line maximum potential in gigawatt per year. So you can see that how much the numbers in each countries, but in total it will able to generate for 31% of the total installed capacities, meaning that we are going to have 19.2 gigawatt solar and 6.5 gigawatt wind installed by 2025. To accommodate this need, the existing interconnection project in the region must be retained, but the current plan for the AIMS3 will unlock the potential of power trade up to 66 terawatt hours in region. Next slide, please. And this one is move a bit with the Apgcc target scenario. So this slide shows the updated cross-border transmission line capacity for all of ASEAN member states, reflecting the finding from the AIMS3 studies. This cross-border transmission line was taken by considering the new short-term target, which incorporate the resource potential, which is already presented before. As suggested, finding exposed so much benefit for the ASEAN member states, and this will unlock the power generation diversification with the cleaner energy resource as the possible option, and eventually unlock more private sector investment opportunity, which could also participate in creation of the more robust of the ASEAN energy connectivities. Next slide is moving from 2025 target to 2040. So it's a bit longer time scale that we have. Is so we were expecting to continue our efforts looking for possible interconnection in ASEAN countries by 2040s. I understand some participants asking that where is Philippines in this landscape? In 2025 maps that you see before, Philippines is not included. Whereas we found it's very challenging, be it technically or economically, for Philippines to be on board in this regional interconnection. But in under 2040s map that we can foresee the connection in region, there's more number is being injected and more countries being interconnected, and is included Philippines. So under this arrangement, based on our finding, by 2040 is around 100 gigawatt solar and almost to 17 gigawatt wind installed capacity could exist by 2040s to support the power system in region. We see significant amount of the existing interconnection projects by region could be upgraded, assuming such technology will be reached both for wind and solar, and as well as the interconnection, so that potentially we can trade the power in region in total up to 200,000 gigawatt hours. So again, we could see unlocking more involvement from everyone, including private sector investment, is very crucial in pursuing the established ASEAN power grid in region. And next slide, just to show you again on the cost that we are looking on this possible scenario. Again, the question is who are going to cover it. We are together expected to cover it with the strong involvement from the private sectors. But what we are trying to show is to convince that there will be a necessary for private sector involvement in achieving this robust ASEAN power grid in more efficient ways. We see that the interplay between interconnection, be it on the build cost for the power plant, the thermal and renewables, VRE, that's interconnection cost, the fuel cost and operational cost, will definitely the opportunities for the investment. So if we can push to look into one scenario that we aim for the scenario that ASEAN renewable energy target scenario, because it also provides most compromise cost among all the scenario. Next slide, I will skip for the next slide is already mentioned, and just to emphasize what is the benefit. But then I move to the question is being addressed by many participants as well. Then what's next? What's next? What is the plan? Who are going to play to implement it? And when the study of AM3 will be released to the public, so we can directly engage, so a private sector can fully involve on this. Now we are in the phase of the completing our phase 2. If you remember that we have phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, and then now we are finalizing scope of the AIMS phase 3, where we look into the grid code and technical standards, and then multilateral electricity markets. Some of you is also asking that whether the political or technical question will be a challenge. So this is where we are addressing this. And then it will work with the HAPA working group. The HAPA, the utility association in ASEAN country, as the owner of these studies, owner of the implementation of the ASEAN power grid. But perhaps you're also familiar, we have 5 working group under the HAPA. So HAPA working group 3 and 4 will be very much a leader for this implementation. Then we also look the plan for setting a renewable energy target for ASEAN, how to achieve a new short-term Rcre target, how to set a long-term Rcre target with the intensive consultation with the lead of RESSN focal point. So RESSN is the focal point of ASEAN who are responsible on the renewable energy plan for the progress of our Rcre target in the region, and then it's also responsible to the bridging from the policymaker with the utility experts on translating the regional finding into the national one, in translating it into the power development plan in each country. Then the box on the right is to promote the Rcre investment in ASEAN. We have 42 plus 20 sites that being identified. We are very happy to see the interest of the participant on this site selection. So it's expected to be finalized. So we are in discussion with the countries to conduct more studies on that, so we'll be able to provide a clear opportunity for the private sectors to continue to get commercial interest and work with the donors and international organizations to support to finance these projects. We have around almost 100 gigawatts of the potential Rcre projects need to be commenced from today until 2025 to achieve the target. And for this, we work with the RESSN, and then we will engage the private sectors. Then to support the transmission interconnection, the box that you see in the below is being led by Hapua Working Group 2. It's being chaired by the Thailand EGAT. So we will work with Hapua, with Pak Bakara, all that to identify and prioritize the interconnection lines and conduct the pre-feasibility studies, and then lead for the financing discussion. The last slide, please. Next slide. So it will be my last slide to respond to the question is when the study is going to be released. We are continuing the discussion with the countries, the senior official. It will be brought up to the Hapua. It will be presented to the minister level this September, and then it will be also released immediately to the public, so everyone can have a full understanding, a full document of this studies, which is mentioned earlier, is more than 3,000 pages with a very detailed information that will be very useful for everyone, including the private sector, to engage for the commercial projects. And then, so then from that, as being mentioned by Pak Bakara, they're being translated into the APAI as a commitment of the region to move forward on this. That will be the end of my slide to show that about the plan to implementation of the AIM3 studies and how we see the involvement of private sector to support. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Benny. And don't go anywhere, Benny, because the Q&A is coming, and we're going to turn that back over to you. For everyone listening, if you have questions, please do put them in the chat in the Q&A box right now, because we want to have some time for a bit of discussion about this implementation plan or anything else that you've heard throughout this webinar. So Benny, I'm going to turn the Q&A over to you, and Dana is standing by to assist you to run the Q&A as needed. So go ahead and feel free to look into the Q&A questions and address some that are there. And those of you who are sitting with questions, please do type them in so we can get to as many as possible.
Thank you, Jen. That's gonna be. Then feel free to also chip in. That's gonna be some question I already answer in the presentation. So I will try to also go through the others question that we have. I mean, it's gonna be some question asking about the lesson learned from LTMS. This is already mentioned, presented by Dr. Santis, but to add on that one, that LTM or noise being expanded, LTMS is being considered as the pathfinders for us in implementing the ASEAN power grids. The list that you've seen before is a lot of bilateral projects, and now we really aim to have a multilateral project. And the success of the LTM, which is now being translated LTM as it's being presented by Persanti, is very much provide a reference for us on how we can work as a region to implement this. And also the question, is there an organization that's responsible to regulate for the dispatching electrical power between the countries? And I will respond it theoretically. I mean, it's going to be definitely yes, there is a need for an organization that's responsible on this. Now we are trying to find out what is the right form for ASEAN. Previously, ASEAN Papua, with the support from the area, conduct studies to identify about the ATSO AGTP, ASEAN Transmission System Operator, and ASEAN Generation Transmission power plant studies that being identified what is the necessary institution to move forward with this multilateral power trade. The IEA studies also, the studies being done by IEA to support ASEAN identified multilateral power trade is also significantly provide a step-by-step basis, the minimum requirement for the ASEAN on how to escalate it, this electrical power transition between the countries and move forward with this power grid interconnection master plan. And I hope that respond to the some question that's being addressed about who running what, who's taking a lead. The question also Pak Bakara is also mentioned that there is a role for each party in the ASEAN scheme. So we have Papua as the group of utilities, the project owners. We have also Apgcc, in case you are not familiar with this naming, ASEAN Power Grid Consultative Council. So it's a group of utilities people, a group of policy makers that oversee this ASEAN Power Grid studies. There is also ACE, our institution to support as the implementing agency, conduct studies, engage the discussion with the countries, and of course, I mean, it's going to be with the supporting partners, development partners, donors like we have with USAID, with the others to support the financing of the projects, as well as the private sectors to support the implementation of this. That's also the question that I look and another question that I could also take, the LTM SPIP Technical Task Force. This is a group that formed by these 4 countries. So the group is representing by 4 countries coming from the utility expert, the policy experts being engaged directly, supported as well with the Papua coordination. Is being reported directly to the minister. It's a lot of questions that are being shared. Thanks for that. Another question that I could also respond in I mean, it's going to be, thank you, man, again, is responding in the Philippines. In the maps that we have 4 scenarios, so each number is representing the scenario that and for in particular for the connection with the Philippines, we only see on the latest scenario when we're having a high VRE scenario. So that's where in the the previous scenario it's come as the 0. We are in the discussion with the Philippines right now for further conduct the assessment, because as per the discussion that we have, the connection with the rest of the ASEAN countries is also very crucial for them. I address a number of questions. With interest of time, I think I'm not able to respond all. Maybe just turn back if then any critical question that I missed that I need to immediately answer. But other than that, we are happy to take it letters and respond to all.
Benny, I would just say there were lots of detailed questions about the study that I think you would agree, because I shared them all with you, are very detailed and would take maybe quite a bit of time to explain. So they're useful questions, but it might be easier for people, unfortunately, to understand it when the final report comes out and the analysis is explained and you shared that timeline. Can you clarify? I think it's, even though AMEM has seen the first phase of the study and the initial analysis for the second phase, they haven't seen the whole thing together as a final analysis. I understand the final meeting with the ASEAN member states is this Thursday. So perhaps you could just clarify when it will be launched and sort of published. There will be, of course, a final report prepared, for AMEM, for sharing with AMEM. But can you share any more insight on that, when something might be available, the public version might be available?
Yes, thank you very much, Dana. So I will confirm about the timeline. Not a confirmation, but this is what we try to arrange with the support from HAPWA. So as we are completing the phase 2 and then conducting the phase 3 with expected. So we are expecting the full version of AIM3 will be presented to the SOM in June and then to the minister in September this year. So with this approval of the minister in September, then after that we'll be able to release this full version of the studies to the public. So this is where the public can have a full access for the information, which we believe will be able to use as a reference for them to also involve on all the projects that we are proposing or we identified on this. But along the way, from today until September, we are continuing our consultation with the HAPWA, with the RESSN focal point, with REPP as focal point, as well as with the public as well, where we are inviting engagements or discussion. So it's very much welcome for everyone to reach us as well for any question, any insight, any input during this kind of process, so that we can enhance the studies to be ready to be presented to the minister September this year. I hope this answers your question and also others, Dana. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Benny. And Dana, I would like to invite you to just close us out for today. With some closing remarks.
Thank you, everyone. I would like to thank all of our participants. There was lively set of questions, lively process for submitting questions, lots of detailed questions, and really overarching important questions. One of them was about political will, and I tried to address that without using the words, but let me just say in my closing remarks that ACE and HAPWA are political organizations. They're intergovernmental, and a part of their role is dealing with the political will. So by the ASEAN ministers signing on to the final study, that is really an important part of that process, but also the participation of all the ASEAN member states and their technical experts has been really critical. And I would say that's what we're presenting today is the result of a couple of years of work of very qualified analysts, experts. We have had a technical review group that includes the Hawaii Natural Energy Institute and the National Renewable Energy Lab. in all aspects of the study, and some participation also by ARENA and IEA. And so we've come to the end of a study, but not just the beginning of implementation. I'm sorry, I'm not looking correctly into the camera. I realized I moved my laptop. So this is a critical point, and that's why we chose this point, even though we're not at the point of releasing the study, to have this webinar on the critical issues for implementation, because it will be important for the ASEAN organizations with support from donors and with all of the participants in the different member states to determine a path forward for these many issues that must be synchronized, as they always have to be for bilateral trade. And then dealing with the issues that establish a foundation for multilateral trade. Some people call the Laos, Thailand, Malaysia, Singapore trade as enhanced bilateral because it's not actually a market. So the future is going to require traditional bilateral cross-border trade, as well as perhaps more opportunities like this, LTMS, and looking at the foundational issues that need to be addressed, including grid codes for establishing a voluntary multilateral market. This is one of the first steps that's recommended. It's been done for the GMS, looking at a regional basis. It is a huge leap forward from what was done in the previous AIM studies, which does, as you heard from Mr. Bakara, feed into the plans for the ASEAN Power Grid. But it's so much more than that. It's also looking at how does the ASEAN organization influence and interact with the different countries and what their plans are for the future, both in terms of what's going to be built in their countries and how much they might trade with each other, and how it benefits not only the trading partners, but all of ASEAN. So it's a landmark study. It's a point in time where, even though it's not finished, we're really grateful for the input of those who participated today, private sector, other donors, individuals who are involved in planning and policy of the different countries, and other distinguished guests. It's been excellent having your input. I've enjoyed seeing your questions, and we hope we've addressed as many as we can. Implementation is the next step, and that's what ACE and HAPA will be focusing on, is for the first time, not only creating a study that says, here's the grid that's needed, but really understanding what the implementation plan needs to be. So with that, I just will say thank you for your participation, and please feel free to stay in touch with ACE and with us. Our project is ending in a couple months. We're happy to continue to answer any questions while we're still here on the ground. Thank you very much.
Dana, for those closing remarks. And thank you, Jen, for moderating today. Thank you to all of our speakers and everybody that came to be on our panels and provide opening remarks. Thank you to all the attendees. I do want to alert everybody to the fact that when you sign off, you will see a post-event survey. So this really gives us an idea of how well we did and what you liked about this, and how we can help you further. So please participate in that. And then all of the slides and recording will be available at the end. So look out for that. And then as part of the Power Sector Learning Series, we do have webinars regularly. Our next webinar will be a follow-up to our February 24th webinar that introduced attendees to the Renewable Energy Data Explorer that was created by NREL. So on April 28th, next week at 9 a.m. Bangkok time, we will do a follow-up to that called Informing Renewable Energy Project Development with the Renewable Energy Data Explorer. So please look out for that, and thank you all for coming, and we'll see you next time.